The days that followed were a whirlwind of emotions and decisions, but Emily never wavered in her support for Sarah. Together, they contacted a local domestic violence hotline, where a counselor guided them through the steps to ensure Sarah's safety. The counselor helped Sarah file a restraining order against her husband and connected her with a shelter where she could stay temporarily. It wasn't an easy process. Sarah faced moments of doubt and fear, but Emily remained by her side every step of the way. One evening, as they sat together in Emily's living room surrounded by pamphlets, contact numbers, and notes from their meetings, Sarah finally broke down. "I feel so stupid," she admitted, tears streaming down her face. "How did I let it get this far? Why didn't I leave sooner?" Emily reached over and took her hand. "You're not stupid, Sarah," she said firmly. "Abuse isn't something you can just walk away from. It's complicated, messy, and terrifying. He manipulated you, made you believe it was your fault, or that no one would understand. But none of this is your fault. You're taking control now, and that takes incredible strength." Sarah nodded slowly, wiping her eyes. For the first time in months, she felt like she could breathe again. Though the road ahead wouldn't be easy, she knew she had allies who cared about her and resources to help her rebuild her life. A week later, Sarah moved into the shelter, a safe haven filled with women who understood her pain and shared her journey toward healing. Emily visited often, bringing books, clothes, and little treats to brighten Sarah's days. She also accompanied her to court hearings, where Sarah bravely testified about the abuse she endured. Her husband was served with legal consequences, ensuring he couldn't harm her or anyone else again. As weeks turned into months, Sarah began to rediscover herself. She reconnected with old hobbies, started journaling, and even enrolled in online courses to further her career in fashion design. Emily watched with pride as her friend transformed from a frightened woman hiding her pain to someone confident and determined to reclaim her life. Eventually, Sarah found the courage to write a heartfelt letter to Emily, expressing her gratitude. "You saved me when I didn't think anyone could," she wrote. "You saw what others missed, and you refused to look away. Because of you, I have hope again." Reading the letter brought tears to Emily's eyes. She realized that sometimes small actions, like noticing a bandage or asking the right question, could change someone's life forever. Their friendship, once strained by years apart, had grown stronger than ever. Months later, at a quiet cafe downtown, the two friends met for coffee. Sarah looked radiant, wearing a bright yellow dress that seemed to reflect her renewed spirit. They laughed over shared memories and talked excitedly about the future. As they hugged goodbye, Emily felt a deep sense of fulfillment. She hadn't just attended a wedding that day. She had played a part in helping her friend escape a nightmare and step into freedom. Walking back to her car, Emily reflected on the experience. Life had taught her many lessons, but this one stood out. Paying attention matters. Being present, listening closely, and trusting your instincts can make all the difference, not only for yourself, but for those you care about most. Emily's mind raced as she held Sarah close, her friend's tears soaking into the fabric of her dress. She knew this was a delicate situation. Sarah's safety depended on making the right decisions, and every second counted. The last thing Emily wanted was to act impulsively and put Sarah in even greater danger. But one thing was clear: they couldn't stay here, not with him nearby. "Listen to me," Emily said softly, pulling back slightly so she could look Sarah in the eye. "I'm not going to let anything happen to you. We need to get you somewhere safe tonight. Right now. Do you trust me?" Sarah nodded weakly, though fear still lingered in her expression. "What about him?" she asked, her voice trembling. "If he notices I'm gone, we'll make sure he doesn't suspect anything," Emily reassured her. "For now, we just need to focus on getting you out of here without causing a scene. Can you walk okay? Or should I call for help?" "I can walk," Sarah whispered, wiping her tears with shaky hands. "But what will I tell people if they ask where I'm going?" Emily thought quickly. "We'll say you're feeling unwell, and needs some fresh air. That's believable enough, and no one will question it. Once we're outside, we'll figure out the next steps. Helping Sarah to her feet, Emily guided her back toward the main hall. As they re-entered the reception area, a few guests glanced their way, but no one paid much attention. Emily spotted Rachel, the same high school friend she'd spoken to earlier, lingering near the dessert table. Seizing the opportunity, she approached her. "Hey, Rachel," Emily said, keeping her tone casual. "Sarah's not feeling great, probably overwhelmed from the day. I'm going to take her outside for some fresh air. Could you keep an eye on things in case anyone asks?" Rachel nodded sympathetically. "Of course. Poor Sarah. Tell her I hope she feels better soon." With that distraction in place, Emily led Sarah through the crowd and out onto the patio. The cool night air hit them immediately, calming Sarah somewhat as they stepped away from the noise and lights of the party. They moved quickly across the lawn, heading toward Emily's car parked at the edge of the venue. Once inside the vehicle, Emily turned to Sarah. "Okay, here's the plan," she began, speaking firmly but gently. "We're going to drive to my house. It's quiet there, and we can talk more privately. From there, we'll decide what to do next. Does that work for you?" Sarah hesitated, then nodded. "Thank you, Emily," she murmured, her voice thick with emotion. "I don't know what I would have done without you tonight." "You never have to face something like this alone," Emily replied, squeezing Sarah's hand reassuringly before starting the engine. "Let's get you somewhere safe first. Then we'll figure everything else out." The drive to Emily's house was silent except for the soft hum of the car and the occasional sniffle from Sarah. When they arrived, Emily ushered her friend inside, settling her on the couch with a blanket and a cup of tea. For the first time that evening, Sarah seemed to relax slightly, though the weight of her confession still hung heavy in the air. "Now," Emily said, sitting beside her, "let's talk about what happens next. There are people who can help, professionals trained to deal with situations like this. Domestic violence shelters, hotlines, legal support. You don't have to go back to him, Sarah. Not ever." Sarah's eyes filled with tears again, but this time they were tears of relief rather than fear. "I want to leave him," she admitted quietly. "I've been so scared, but now, I think I can finally do it." Emily smiled, her heart swelling with pride and determination. "You're stronger than you realize, Sarah, and you're not alone anymore." The rest of the evening passed in a blur for Emily. She tried to focus on conversations with other guests, forcing polite smiles and nodding along to their stories, but her mind kept drifting back to Sarah. The image of her friend's fearful expression haunted her. Something was deeply wrong, and Emily couldn't shake the feeling that time was running out. As the clock ticked closer to midnight, the energy at the reception began to wind down. Many guests had already left, while others gathered in small groups, chatting lazily over the last remnants of dessert and coffee. Emily noticed Sarah sitting alone at a table near the exit, her shoulders slumped and her eyes distant. This was her chance. Walking over casually, Emily pulled out a chair and sat beside her. "Hey," she said softly, placing a reassuring hand on Sarah's arm. "Can we talk for a minute?" Sarah looked up, startled, then sighed. "Emily, I'm fine, really. You don't need to worry about me." "I know you've said that," Emily replied gently, "but I can't help it. That's what friends do. They worry. And honestly, I think there's more going on than you're letting on." Sarah hesitated, her fingers fidgeting with the hem of her dress. For a long moment, she didn't say anything, her gaze fixed on the floor. Then, quietly, she whispered, "It's nothing. Just forget it." But Emily wasn't about to let it go. "Sarah," she said firmly, leaning in so no one else could overhear, "I saw the bandage earlier, and I saw how you reacted when I mentioned it. Please, just let me check it. If it's nothing serious, great, we'll laugh about it later. But if it is something, well, I'd never forgive myself for not doing anything." Sarah bit her lip, clearly torn. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, she nodded reluctantly. "Okay," she murmured, "but not here. Somewhere private." Emily stood and guided Sarah toward a quiet hallway leading away from the main hall. It was dimly lit, the hum of the party fading into the background as they stepped further away. Once they were alone, Emily turned to face her friend. "Let me see," she said gently. With trembling hands, Sarah lifted the hem of her dress, revealing her ankle, and what lay beneath made Emily's breath catch in her throat. The bandage covered extensive bruising, dark purple splotches mottling Sarah's skin. But what shocked Emily most was the pattern. It wasn't random. The bruises formed distinct shapes, almost like fingerprints, marks left by someone gripping too tightly, too forcefully. "Oh, Sarah," Emily whispered, her voice breaking. She crouched down to examine the injury more closely, her heart pounding. "This isn't from tripping, is it?" Tears spilled down Sarah's cheeks as she shook her head. "No," she admitted in a choked whisper. It's him. My husband." Emily froze, her stomach churning. "What do you mean?" she asked, though deep down she already knew the answer. "He's been hurting me," Sarah confessed, her voice barely audible. "For months now. He says he loves me, but he gets angry so easily. At first, it was just yelling, insults. Then it got worse. Tonight, before the ceremony, he grabbed my ankle because I dropped something. He said it was an accident, that he didn't mean to hurt me. But..." Her words trailed off, drowned out by sobs. Emily reached out and pulled Sarah into a tight embrace, holding her as she cried. Her mind raced with anger, sadness, and disbelief. How could anyone harm someone as kind and gentle as Sarah? And how had she hidden this pain for so long? When Sarah finally calmed down, Emily took a deep breath. "We need to get you help," she said firmly. "You don't deserve this, Sarah. No one does. We'll figure this out together, I promise." Sarah hesitated, fear flickering in her eyes. "What if he finds out?" she whispered. "He'll be furious." "He won't hurt you again," Emily vowed, her voice steady despite the storm of emotions inside her. "Not if I have anything to say about it." As the evening stretched on, Emily grew increasingly restless. The band played upbeat songs, and the dance floor buzzed with energy, but her thoughts were consumed by the image of that bandage peeking out from beneath Sarah's dress. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong, something serious, and she knew she had to act. But how? Confronting someone at their own wedding, especially about something so sensitive, wasn't exactly a straightforward task. Emily waited for a lull in the festivities. When the music shifted to a slower, more subdued tune, she spotted her opportunity. Sarah had stepped away from the crowd, retreating to a quiet corner near the bar where she stood alone, sipping water and glancing around the room as if searching for an escape. Her posture was tense, her shoulders slightly hunched, and her smile looked forced even though no one was paying attention to her at that moment. Taking a deep breath, Emily approached her cautiously. "Hey," she said softly, keeping her tone light and friendly. "Mind if I join you?" Sarah blinked, startled out of her thoughts, then nodded. "Of course," she replied, though her voice lacked its usual warmth. "It's your table anyway." Emily chuckled lightly, trying to ease the tension. "I guess it is." She paused, studying Sarah's face carefully before continuing. "You've been amazing today, Sarah. Everyone's talking about how beautiful everything is. The flowers, the venue, all of it. You really pulled off the perfect wedding." For a brief moment, Sarah's lips curved into a genuine smile, but it faded almost instantly. "Thanks," she murmured, looking down at her glass. "It's been a lot." "I can imagine," Emily said gently, leaning in just enough to make the conversation feel intimate. "But hey, listen. If anything feels overwhelming or off, you know you can talk to me, right? We've known each other forever. I'm not just here for the cake." Sarah hesitated, her fingers tightening around the stem of her glass. For a second, Emily thought she might open up, But then Sarah shook her head and plastered on another practiced smile. "No, I'm fine. Just tired, I guess. It's been a long day." Emily nodded slowly, letting the silence hang between them for a moment. She didn't want to push too hard. Not yet, but she also couldn't ignore what she'd seen earlier. "You know," she began casually, "earlier, when you were dancing, I noticed, well, it looked like you might have hurt your ankle or something. Is everything okay there?" Sarah froze, her eyes widening slightly before she quickly masked her reaction. "Oh, that," she said with a dismissive laugh that sounded far too rehearsed. "Yeah, I tripped a few days ago while running errands. Totally clumsy of me. Nothing serious, though." The explanation seemed plausible enough, but something about the way Sarah rushed through her words made Emily uneasy. Her instincts screamed that this wasn't the whole truth. Still, she decided to tread carefully. Pushing too hard now could shut Sarah down completely. "Well, if it's still bothering you, maybe we should take a closer look," Emily suggested, her tone calm and professional. "Old habits die hard. You know, I can't turn off the doctor part of my brain. Let me check it out real quick, just to be safe." Sarah's expression shifted from guarded to panicked in an instant. No, it's fine, really," she insisted, taking a small step back. "I don't want to ruin my dress or anything. Besides, it's nothing." Emily studied her friend closely, noting the slight tremor in Sarah's hands and the way her gaze darted nervously around the room. This wasn't just embarrassment or reluctance, it was fear. Pure, unfiltered fear. And in that moment, Emily felt certain of one thing. Whatever was hidden beneath that bandage wasn't caused by a simple accident. "Okay," Emily said finally, softening her tone. "If you're sure, then I won't push. But please, promise me you'll let me know if it gets worse, or if anything else is going on, okay? I'm here for you, Sarah. Always." Sarah nodded mutely, avoiding eye contact as tears welled up in her eyes. Before Emily could say anything more, Sarah excused herself, disappearing into the crowd. Watching her go, Emily felt a knot tighten in her stomach. Something was very wrong, and she vowed silently to get to the bottom of it, no matter what it took. The reception began with a lively energy that seemed to sweep everyone off their feet. The newlyweds entered the grand hall to thunderous applause, hand in hand, smiling as if they were living out the happiest day of their lives. Emily clapped along with the others, but her attention remained fixed on Sarah. Even amidst the celebratory atmosphere, Sarah's earlier signs of discomfort lingered in Emily's mind like an unanswered question. As the evening unfolded, dinner was served, and guests mingled over plates of gourmet food and glasses of sparkling wine. Emily found herself seated at a table near the dance floor, giving her a perfect view of the festivities. She watched as Sarah and her husband took center stage for their first dance. The spotlight illuminated them, casting a warm glow that highlighted every detail of Sarah's gown as it swirled around her ankles. It was during one of these twirls that Emily noticed something peculiar. A brief flash of fabric lifting ever so slightly, revealing a glimpse of what looked like a hastily applied bandage wrapped around Sarah's ankle. Her heart skipped a beat. A bandage. On her wedding day. Most brides would do everything in their power to ensure perfection, especially when it came to their appearance. So why would Sarah wear something so conspicuous under her dress? Emily's curiosity deepened. She leaned forward slightly in her chair, trying to get a better look without drawing attention to herself. But just as quickly as the fabric had lifted, it fell back into place, leaving her with more questions than answers. Determined to understand what she had seen, Emily replayed the moment in her mind. Was it possible Sarah had injured herself recently? Perhaps she tripped while practicing her walk down the aisle or twisted her ankle stepping out of a car. Accidents happened all the time, after all. Yet, something about the placement of the bandage, and the way Sarah had been moving earlier, didn't sit right with Emily. Her medical instincts told her this wasn't just a minor scrape or bruise. Throughout the meal, Emily couldn't focus on the conversations happening around her. Instead, Her thoughts kept circling back to that fleeting glimpse of Sarah's ankle. What if the injury wasn't accidental? Could there be another explanation altogether? Abuse victims often concealed their wounds, hiding them beneath layers of clothing or makeup to avoid suspicion. The thought sent a chill down Emily's spine. No, she told herself firmly. She didn't have enough evidence to jump to such conclusions. Still, the possibility gnawed at her. After dinner, the DJ cranked up the music, and the dance floor filled with guests laughing and spinning under the twinkling lights. Emily stayed seated, nursing a glass of water as she observed Sarah from afar. Every now and then, Sarah joined in the dancing, though her movements remained cautious and controlled. She avoided anything too energetic, sticking to gentle sways and slow turns. To anyone else, she might have appeared reserved or shy. But to Emily, it looked deliberate, as if Sarah were protecting herself from further pain. By the time dessert was served, Emily's mind was racing. She knew she couldn't let this go unnoticed any longer. If Sarah was hurt, or worse, Emily owed it to her friend to find out the truth. They may have grown apart over the years, but their bond ran deeper than distance or time. Whatever was going on, Emily couldn't stand by and do nothing. With resolve firming in her chest, Emily decided she needed to talk to Sarah privately. Not to accuse or confront, but to offer help, if it was needed. As the night wore on and the celebrations continued around her, Emily waited patiently for the right moment. Her eyes never strayed far from Sarah, watching for any sign that might reveal more about the mystery hidden beneath her elegant gown. The ceremony began as the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting a golden glow over the lush garden. Guests settled into their seats, craning their necks to catch a glimpse of the bride, as soft instrumental music filled the air. Emily found herself near the back, her seat offering a clear view of the aisle. She adjusted her posture, trying to focus on the beauty of the moment, the fragrant flowers lining the path, the gentle rustle of leaves in the breeze, and the anticipation buzzing through the crowd. When Sarah finally appeared, arm in arm with her father, a collective sigh of admiration rippled through the guests. Her gown sparkled delicately under the fading sunlight, and her veil trailed gracefully behind her. To anyone else, she looked every bit the radiant bride, glowing with happiness as she took slow, measured steps toward the altar. But Emily's sharp eyes missed nothing. As Sarah walked, she seemed unusually deliberate in her movements, as though each step required careful thought. There was none of the joyful bounce or carefree energy one might expect from a woman about to marry the love of her life. Emily leaned forward slightly, studying Sarah more closely. Every few moments, Sarah would pause almost imperceptibly, shifting her weight from one foot to the other. That's when Emily noticed it, a subtle wince that flashed across Sarah's face before disappearing just as quickly. It was so fleeting that most people wouldn't have caught it, but Emily's instincts kicked in immediately. Years of working as a doctor had honed her ability to notice even the smallest signs of discomfort or pain. Her mind raced. Was Sarah simply struggling with uncomfortable shoes? Or was there something more serious going on? The wince wasn't dramatic enough to draw attention from the guests around her, but to Emily, it stood out like a red flag. She couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just nerves or fatigue. It was something physical. As the ceremony progressed, Emily tried to focus on the words being exchanged between Sarah and her groom. The vows were heartfelt, filled with promises of love and devotion. Yet, despite the romantic atmosphere, Emily kept finding her gaze drifting back to Sarah. Something about her posture felt off. She stood rigidly, clutching her bouquet tightly against her chest, as if using it for support. Her hands trembled ever so slightly, betraying the calm exterior she worked so hard to maintain. Even during the ring exchange, Sarah hesitated briefly before extending her hand to accept the band. Emily noticed how gingerly she held it, as though any sudden movement might cause her pain. Her smile remained steady, practiced, but her eyes betrayed a flicker of unease. It was as though she were performing, playing the role of the perfect bride while hiding something beneath the surface. By the time the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, Emily's thoughts were a whirlwind of concern. She clapped along with the rest of the guests, forcing a polite smile as Sarah and her new husband shared their first kiss. Confetti rained down around them, and cheers erupted from the crowd, but Emily's mind was elsewhere. What was causing Sarah's discomfort? Was it something minor, like blisters from ill-fitting shoes? Or was it something far more troubling? Emily knew she couldn't let it go. Her instincts told her that this wasn't just a case of pre-wedding jitters or exhaustion. Something deeper was at play, and she couldn't ignore the possibility that her friend might be in need of help, whether she realized it or not. As the pre-wedding festivities buzzed around her, Emily decided to make an effort to reconnect with Sarah. She spotted her old friend standing near the dessert table, laughing politely at something a guest had said. Sarah looked breathtaking in her wedding gown, sleek and modern, with delicate lace accents that shimmered under the soft lights strung across the venue. Her blonde hair was styled into loose waves, framing her face perfectly. To anyone else, she appeared to be the picture of happiness on her special day. But Emily's trained eyes caught something beneath the surface. As she approached Sarah, weaving through clusters of well-dressed guests, she noticed how stiffly Sarah held herself. There was no bounce in her step, no carefree energy that Emily remembered from their childhood. When Sarah turned to greet her, her smile seemed rehearsed, almost forced, as if she were trying too hard to convince everyone, including herself, that everything was perfect. "Emily," Sarah exclaimed, her voice bright but lacking its usual warmth. "I'm so glad you could make it." The two women embraced briefly before stepping back to study each other. Emily searched Sarah's face for any trace of the bubbly, confident girl she once knew, but instead found tension etched into her features. Sarah's hands fluttered nervously at her sides, fidgeting with the fabric of her dress. Even her laugh sounded strained when another guest interrupted them to offer congratulations. "You look amazing," Emily said sincerely, though her tone carried a hint of concern. "Are you doing okay?" Sarah hesitated for a fraction of a second before nodding quickly. "Of course. Why wouldn't I be?" she replied, her words tumbling out faster than they should have. She glanced away, avoiding direct eye contact, and adjusted the bouquet in her arms as if needing something to occupy her restless hands. Emily frowned slightly but didn't press further, not yet. Instead, she made small talk, asking about the planning process and complimenting the venue. Sarah responded mechanically, reciting answers as though she'd practiced them countless times. The conversation felt stilted, unnatural. Every time Emily tried to steer the topic toward personal feelings or memories, Sarah skillfully redirected it back to safer ground. Flowers, catering, seating arrangements. It wasn't just Sarah's demeanor that troubled Emily. It was also the way she moved, or rather, how she didn't move. For someone who used to dance barefoot in the rain and run wild through fields, Sarah now seemed unnaturally still. She barely shifted her weight from one foot to the other. And when she did, Emily noticed a fleeting grimace cross her face. It lasted only a second, but it was enough to catch her attention. "Your feet must hurt in those heels," Emily joked lightly, hoping to ease some of the tension. "How long have you been standing?" "Oh, it's fine," Sarah replied dismissively, waving a hand as if to brush off the comment. But her fingers trembled slightly as she tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "These shoes are surprisingly comfortable." Emily wasn't convinced. Something wasn't adding up. Sarah's behavior was unlike anything she'd ever seen from her friend. The more she observed, the more questions swirled in her mind. Was Sarah simply overwhelmed by the stress of the big day? Or was there something deeper, something darker, lurking beneath the surface? Before she could probe further, a photographer called for Sarah's attention, pulling her away to pose for group photos. Emily watched as Sarah plastered on another practiced smile, her discomfort masked by layers of charm and poise. Though Emily stayed quiet for now, she couldn't ignore the gnawing feeling that this wedding wasn't quite the fairy tale it appeared to be. Dr. Emily Carter stepped out of her car, adjusting the hem of her elegant navy blue dress as she took in the sprawling countryside venue. The air smelled of fresh flowers and grass, and soft music drifted from the direction of the garden, where chairs were neatly arranged under a floral archway. It was Sarah's wedding day, a day Emily hadn't expected to be part of. She and Sarah had grown up together, inseparable through childhood sleepovers, school projects, and summer adventures. But life had pulled them in different directions over the years. While Emily pursued medicine, dedicating herself to long hours at the hospital, Sarah moved away, started working in fashion design, and eventually got engaged. The invitation had arrived unexpectedly one rainy afternoon. Emily remembered holding it in her hands, staring at the gold-embossed letters that spelled out "You're invited." For a moment, she hesitated. Between surgeries, late-night shifts, and endless responsibilities, attending a wedding felt like more of a burden than a celebration. Yet something about the invitation tugged at her heartstrings. Memories of their younger days flooded back, laughing until their stomachs hurt, sharing secrets under starry skies, and dreaming about what their futures would hold. How could she not go? As she made her way toward the entrance, clutching her small handbag tightly, Emily couldn't help but feel out of place. Everyone around her seemed so polished, dressed in designer outfits and chatting animatedly. She scanned the crowd for familiar faces but found none. Instead, she caught snippets of conversations, compliments about the decor, predictions about how beautiful the bride would look, and guesses about the menu for dinner. It all felt distant, almost surreal, like watching a scene from a movie rather than being part of real life. Emily grabbed a glass of champagne from a passing waiter and sipped it slowly, trying to calm the uneasy feeling brewing inside her chest. Weddings were supposed to be joyful occasions, weren't they? So why did this one feel off? Maybe it was just nerves. After all, she hadn't seen Sarah in years. People change, grew apart, or became entirely different versions of themselves. What if Sarah didn't even remember her fondly anymore? Just then, someone called her name. Turning around, Emily saw Rachel, another friend from high school, waving enthusiastically. Relief washed over her as she walked over to greet her. They exchanged hugs and quick updates on each other's lives before Rachel gestured toward the ceremony area. "Have you seen Sarah yet?" she asked with a grin. "She looks absolutely stunning." Emily forced a smile, though her unease lingered. "Not yet," she replied. "I'm sure she does." But deep down, Emily couldn't shake the nagging sensation that there was more to this story than met the eye. As guests began filing into their seats, she took a deep breath and tried to focus on the present moment. Whatever awaited her today, she reminded herself, wasn't about her own doubts or fears. It was about celebrating Sarah's big day, or so she thought.